podsters and podlars, and welcome to Cazza and Tracy Talk Gavin and Stacey. I'm Tracey.
And I'm Cazza.
And we're friends who, like Gavin and Stacey, met online in the noughties. We connected over small humour, over how life is funny in the minutiae of things, and we also found that we like to read and watch many of the same things. And one of those things was Gavin and Stacey, which is a show that also celebrates small humour, as well as kindness and bluster, and people being magnificently themselves in all their flawed glory. And now that the show is having its one last hurrah with a final Christmas special, we thought we'd rewatch it all, remind ourselves why we loved it, and find out whether we still do. Well, we're up to Season 1, Episode 6, the final episode of the season, and it's the day of the wedding. Let's begin with Tracey's Tracy, which is simply to say this is one of the few television weddings that dispenses with the will she or won't she make it to the church and doesn't even have a will she make it on time. This television wedding is all about the wedding. So it's the morning of the day of the wedding. We see only the aftermath of Gavin confronting Stacey with the truth of her 6 previous engagements. Stacey just tells us that they made up and that's all that matters. After all, she says, she might have had 6 engagements, but this is her first wedding. There's all the perfect touch points. Pam and Gavin with a quiet moment, the foreshadowing of Smithy's speech, predictably awful, Pete and Dawn wrapped in a bitter argument, the mates turning up beers in hand, and what might be the most touching scene of the whole series, Bryn giving Stacey the letter that her dad wrote and left with Bryn with strict instructions to be given to Stacey on her wedding day. There's the photographs after the ceremony, bride and groom arriving at the ceremony, the worst best man speech in history. Are we surprised by this? And there's singing, a lot of singing. It ends with the cliffhanger as Gavin and Stacey leave for their honeymoon and Stacey asks Nessa to promise that she'll tell Smithy that she's pregnant. There's a moment where Nessa might follow through, but that moment passes, and that's the end of the season. Gavin and Stacey are married. Nessa is pregnant. Smithy doesn't know. So that's a basic overview of what happens, but what was this episode about for you?
Well, I guess we've been talking about how they've hit, a few things. So the wedding fairs, they've hit bucks and grooms nights, and this is their take on they wanted to have. And I've read this in interviews, they wanted to have a proper wedding without it being a TV wedding, which has a whole lot of different things and sort of soft lighting and waltzes and kind of manufactured emotion. And what we had here was that they pretty much skip the vows. They don't really linger on that. And they really bring it home for the reception, which I guess, most people, the church, as you sit through it, it's lovely. But then you want to get to the party, and then, this is a big rip-roaring party and a lot of stuff happens. And I think that they wanted to have things like people getting excited to dance to the Grease medley and speeches and hookups and all that sort of thing. I think they did it really, really well. It rings true as the sort of wedding that Gavin Stacey would have.
Yeah, it kind of sums up, because, the series is called Gavin and Stacey, but it's really the world of Gavin and Stacey and the friendships of Gavin and Stacey. And if they'd just made it about the vows and stuff and just made it about Gavin and Stacey, they would have missed, like you say, that huge opportunity to have kind of the Grease medley and all of those things. Yeah, I loved it. I thought the joyousness of it was brilliant, and I thought it was really smart. Like the joy, they don't compromise the joy of Gavin and Stacey and their perfect ending. But they still give us a cliffhanger with Nessa and Smithy and the pregnancy.
I think there's sort of a film, television setup that the wedding is, it's what you're aiming for, and then life stops. You've just got the wedding. And I think that by making it it's just a day with a great party in it, and that there's all this other life, and that, there's going forward more of the relationship. I think that's a really good thing to do. It's not just like, let's just be all la-di-da romance Hollywood.
Yep.
This is what happens. You have a great party. It's probably fights, there's drunkenness, there's whatever, but but that's all it is. It's just a celebration.
How'd you feel rewatching it? Is there anything that made you cringe or you think doesn't really work in 2024?
Yeah, so again, they dispensed with the underage girlfriend because she can't come to a wedding because of a netball grand final. Actually, when I think about the netball players that I know, they don't miss anything for their grand final. Like,
that's fair. Yeah, you would.
that's fair. That's a fair comment. Yeah. I did not enjoy there was a very seedy scene with the very sexy Fingers character deliberately getting the disgruntled bridesmaid more drunk because he knew that he was in with a chance for sex. But I didn't like that kind of
there was
just get a drunk to get laid, but then after they have sex, they just give each other a very pleased with themselves high five, which kind of removes some of the seediness from it. So that it was consensual and they both enjoyed themselves. But I didn't like him getting a drunk to get there, I guess.
I didn't like it was the very subtle tilt that he did of her glass to make her drink more. I actually found that particular scene quite, and I'm going to say triggering, not in a kind of a personal way, but in a really generalised sense of how things used to be for young women. And
it's predatory. It's predatory for sure.
Yeah, and it's probably how things still are. I'm just not really hanging out in those spaces. I was just taken back to those times. And like you say, they did have the high five and everything. And I know it's like a trope to have somebody having sex at a wedding and everything, but to me it was just gratuitous. It wasn't for comic effect. Doesn't drive the plot at all. I didn't like it. I thought it was totally unnecessary and also made me feel, like I didn't want to be there.
Yeah, a little bit unsafe.
Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of felt a little bit obvious that Smithy would be such a shambolic and terrible best man. Like, in a way, I would have liked him to have been a bit better. But I don't think Smithy rises to any challenge in season 1. Like, I just think he fails at every bar. And
he does.
So they've got room for him to grow in the next 2 seasons, I guess. So.
Yes, they've left a lot of opportunity there for him, haven't they?
Was that it for problematic parts for you?
That was probably it.
Yeah.
So if we talk about then, because it is the last episode of the series and it makes it a good time to reflect on characters and their arcs and development, and Smithy's clearly missing any character development at all. But what else did you see in this episode?
You mentioned it in your précis that I did like Gavin, his mum Pam's mother-son moment, and they didn't overplay that. She just fixed up his bow tie and looked a little bit weepy, but then he gave her a nice, it's okay, mum hug, and I enjoyed that. A couple of things about fleshing out the older characters, that there's a talk about, is it rejuvenating sex or just about having sexiness in your lives as an older woman, and they have a proper conversation. It's not ignored. They're not assumed to be asexual, which is nice. I guess at this stage we're seeing vulnerability from Ness. We're seeing that whole Bryn and Jason thing. I'm just not very comfortable with the whole Bryn and Jason.
No, I think they could lose that subplot and I'd be quite happy.
Yeah. It is funny the first time that they walk in and nobody says anything. You've got Gav's cute little eyes going left, right, going, what is happening? But what about you?
Well, yeah, there's Ness's pregnancy, which I guess hasn't really revealed itself as character development yet, but it is definitely plot development, isn't it? And yeah, we've got Smithy, so he's still totally awful. Oh, there is a bit of hint, just the tiniest hint of the tension between Gavin and Stacey when they talk about living in Essex. And Stacey says, we'll be back every weekend. And Gavin says, no, we won't. And she says, well, I will. And it's just that tiny little hint of what's to come. I thought that, and I probably missed that the first time I watched, but that was nice.
Yeah, because, at its heart, it is about people from two different cultures falling in love and what happens around that, and all the family fight scenes and all that are really part of that bigger, not hugely dramatic culture clash, but what happens when you've got a small culture clash and how difficult that is. Yeah.
So changing the tone a bit. I mean, it is a wedding after all. So what's your most heartwarming moment? There's got to be
yeah, it's the dad letter that we talked last week about. They play these scenes really straight. They don't overdo it. They don't over egg it, but they don't try and get the laugh out of it. So Stacey's tears glistening in her eyes as she listens to it, and Bryn not. There's that moment where he offers to do it in the dad's voice with the lisp, and she just shakes her head and he does it, and then he plays it straight, and it's so affecting. It's such a beautiful moment. Just the two of them in the car. I don't know, it's performed brilliantly. I think directed beautifully.
And even though it's got Coldplay playing in the background, even that doesn't turn it cheesy, right? It's still just beautiful.
What's your problem with Coldplay?
I don't have a problem with Coldplay, but it's a very cheesy kind of cliched song to have in the background of that, right? I actually love that song.
Yeah.
Because I used to really love Grey's Anatomy too. You probably never watched Grey's Anatomy because you've got way better taste in things than me, but yeah.
I work nights, so, when Grey's Anatomy started, I couldn't be there for night.
So I really loved that moment. But do you know what I also really thought was outstanding was ending the reception with the Grease chorus. It's what I've loved so much. Like we were saying, it's about Gavin and Stacey, but it's also this sense of connection. And if you're part of their lives, you're part of their joy as well. That was fantastic. I loved it.
Yeah. And Gav did a beautiful speech at the wedding too, and it was another moment where they took to stand still, and just let him do that beautiful speech about his love for her, and that was another moment. It was good. It's all chaos and craziness, but just these little moments where they stop, and you go, I love this show.
Yeah. So, what was your favourite laugh, or your best joke, or your favourite scene, or what did you love the most?
Oh, okay. My absolute favourite, where I just squawked, was that the side characters, Mick and Pam's friends, Dawn and Pete, are having yet another problem with their sex life, where it's just not happening enough for them. And so the other women say that they should try a bit of role play to Dawn. And before the wedding is out, they are, in fact, on the case and doing the role play at the wedding, because no time like the present. And then Pete just is so shit at it. He starts well. He's got Dawn going. He's pretending to be a pilot, and she's warming to the thing. She's liking it. She's going, oh, that must be a lot of pressure for you, and it's building up. And he says, so do you want to have it off? And she just loses her shit at him and goes, oh, you're supposed to woo me, you idiot. Storms up and he's blown it. And it's so funny. Oh, my God.
And he doesn't know what he's done wrong.
He doesn't know what he's done.
No.
Oh, my God. That was my favourite. I love the line when Pam's discussing their sex life about and role play and all that. And she says, oh, we're all into it, Mick and me. He's the first to put the ears on, which is another Charles and Camilla joke. And have we at that stage seen him with the ears?
Yeah.
No, that was, we have seen it.
I'm pretty sure that was like 2 or 3 episodes ago. Oh, yeah, because she's having no, it's later, I think. Oh, they're all swirling in my mind.
Yeah. No. Oh, dear. Anyway, that was another one. There's a cute joke with the Welsh speaking, where Ness asks Smithy where Lucy, the never-seen girlfriend, is, and says in her Welsh way, where to's she now? And Smithy has a go at her for it. I love having all those Welshisms. That's the wrong word, but in there, the where to's she now and what's occurring. They just bubble along in the background, but they're so cool.
I love where to's she now, because where I grew up, when we moved there, when I was in maybe grade 5 or something, and that's what we say, where I lived, where's it to? And my mum hated it, like she was a primary school teacher. But I just loved it because it made me feel like I was part of everyone, and now I still love saying it. It just feels very comforting to me. And people are quite snobbish about it. Like, it makes perfect sense. Once you start using it, it makes excellent sense. It's like use. I use all the time because it just makes good sense. But with the Welshisms, it's really nice how they sort of just let them be there, and it's only every now and then that Smithy will point them out to reinforce them. Otherwise, they're sort of just there as part of it all. They're fantastic. Well, we have not kept very good track of who's answered the questions, but I think it's fair to assume you've done better than me, because I can never even remember my answers when I can remember my questions.
We'll have to do a reveal at the end of you can go through, or one of us can go through and do a reveal, and the winner is.
All right. Do you have a question for me?
Do you know what name Pete gave to his pilot character?
Ah, no.
Here's a little hint. It's the name of a Dutch football player.
Oh, I don't know any Dutch football players.
Because when I heard it, I went, wait a second, I know that name. I had to Google it because he comes up with Captain Mark, and then you can see him going, I need a surname, and then he goes Overmars. So Mark Overmars was quite a famous footballer at the time.
No, don't know that one. All right, I've got two because you'll probably know the first one. Where is Pam's dress from?
No, I don't know the answer to that one. Pam's dress. It's probably Marks and Spencer.
Oh, it's House of Fraser.
Oh.
Yeah. Actually, that's probably because I just knew that because, well, how about this one? What does the DJ call Pam and Stacey?
Oh, I think he gets them almost right, but not quite right. So I'm going to say it's going to be something like Pat or Jan, and maybe Tracey. Does she call her Tracey?
Correct. He called Pam Pat and Stacey Tracey. And I know this because I get called Stacey all the time, including by my husband's grandfather, who knew me for 20 years and still call me Stacey. To be fair to him, one of his nieces was called Stacey, so he couldn't kind of know. So I quite enjoyed that little joke, which I thought was written just for me. So we're at the end of series 1. Let's do a little quick check-in. What did you think? Did you love it in 2024 the same way you loved it in, or is it 2007 or 2008 or whenever you first watched it? The series, I mean.
Definitely. Look, it's a great show. I haven't changed my opinion on that. Because I've been going ahead a bit and I've gone into season 2, I think season 2 is better. But it hits things, it raises, I don't know, I like how they say, let's do bucks and hens, what's our take on it? And they come up with something that's hilarious and truthful, and that they'll overplay some things, but then they'll stop. I think, everyone's fantastic. The performances, Joanna Page as Stacey just gets that joy and almost childishness about her naivety, but her lust for life. Gavin is so good. He's kind of the lens that we see things through. So his little looks of confusion and just rolling his eyes are little moments of beautifulness. Pam and Mick obviously adore them. Ness and Smithy it's funny, I really love Nessa and Smithy, but when you delve down into them, they are terrible characters. But I like going on this journey where you like these terrible characters, and maybe that was kind of new for the time. Like, I think people are doing it a lot more now. For example, if you watch, say, Sex and the City, I used to watch that and hate them, and I didn't love them.
Yeah.
They're just awful. They're just awful people, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was surprised to find how awful they were. I'd forgot, or I'd never quite clocked it, or I knew they weren't. I guess I knew they weren't good entirely, but I didn't realise how awful Smithy really is. He is lucky that Gavin's his friend. He should be really grateful for that. Yeah. And, Bryn's character and, Gwen doesn't sort of stand out, but even her, that's so much her character, keeping the house going with their omelettes and stuff. Yeah.
Yes, but then just coming out every so often with something that's quite outrageous.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you love those two families, and it's beautifully written. It's beautifully performed. It's a great concept. I still really love it. Even if there's bits that I just go, I'm not really going to laugh on that. I would defy most people not to get a laugh out of something in that in this series. You know?
I'm the same, but I think, like I said in the first episode. Or maybe I didn't say it, but I'll say it now. I didn't watch this series first. I'm pretty sure I watched season 2 first, and I'm pretty sure I love season 2, and I like season 1 a lot. But rewatching it was fantastic. Yes. And I really like taking notes as I go, because it did really make me go into, it's so clever. The writing is so clever, and the characters are so good, and they come to us fully formed and completely believable, and the world is wonderful. The world they've created is so complete, even though it's like kind of nothing. I don't really know what the life in Wales is like. Yeah. I really liked it. Yeah.
It's a great show.
Yeah.
It still is a great show.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've had a little hint of the potential tension between Gavin and Stacey, as Stacey says they'll be coming back to Barry every weekend. But basically, we've got our happy ending, and we're also ready to find out what happens next when Nessa and Smithy become parents.
Yes.
So we're off to watch season 2 or to gather our notes up and make them make sense. So I'll talk to you then, Kazla.
Thanks, Tracey. See you next time.
Okay, bye.